Well, hello there. It is great to see you again, and welcome back to another installment of Lessons by the Lake, the Oswego Private Wealth Show. I am your host and moderator, Ryan Ruff, and as always, we have the star of our show in Mr. Bob Bedritis, the managing director of Oswego Private Wealth, joining us in just a moment for another wealth management related discussion. That's what we tackle here on this show. And if you're new to this show, we basically are unpacking the same sort of strategies, solutions, and ultimately conversations that Bob is having with his clients on a regular basis, and we're bringing them right here to you on this show. Now, if you're, a familiar, frequent visitor of the show, you know that we opened things up in our inaugural episode with a topic that really dove deep into the idea of a stress test. Really, we tackled what it is and why it can be beneficial to people given, all this uncertainty we've been seeing in the world, and really how it can be applied, given the wealth manager that you're working with. But today, in today's episode, we're going to take a little bit of a different twist on things with the stress test. Specifically, we're going to be identifying the benefits of stress testing for business owners, particularly. I know there's a lot of business owners that Bob works with on his day-to-day at Oswego Private Wealth, and there's certainly a lot of business owners out there, watching and listening to today's episode. So boy, do we have a great topic to tackle for you guys today. So with that being said, let's go ahead and bring Bob on, get into today's discussion, and just frame up really why stress testing should be such a crucial thing that business owners should be considering. Bob, great to see you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Ryan. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. I always look forward to getting together with you. And today we've got a good little discussion tuned up. Really, the topic of our discussion, family fortunes, stress testing for business owners. Bob, give us this high level, if you will. Why is this something in the first place that people really should be considering if they are, in fact, business owners?
One of the smartest things that an entrepreneur can do is to learn what other successful business owners are doing as well. And it's an extremely valuable tool that's used by those with 500 million or plus, the extremely high net worth. And the idea is called stress testing. And simply, stress testing is just a process to see how well positioned you really are in these crazy social, political, economic times that we live in. So what we're doing is we're looking for the gaps in your planning and then bringing solutions to the table, ultimately to give you results, to live the life you want to live, take care of the causes you care about, the people that you love, and live a life of amazing significance. Now, stress testing is not a new concept. It's been around for a long time. For those in the $500 million plus category, there's family offices. And a recent survey showed that 9 out of 10 family offices have stress tested their plans in the past 5 years. And if you think about a family office, these are private offices with, again, very expensive real estate, some of the greatest minds in the legal world, the financial world, the accounting world, and yet they still bring in another set of eyes to stress test or to check their plans, again, looking for those gaps in the planning and to take care of those issues.
Yeah, Bob, I'm fascinated by this idea because you hit the nail on the head on what makes it so interesting for me personally is just this idea of, yes, those individuals with $500, 500 million or more in net worth, they have a team, a family office around them to make sure that their plan is buttoned up. Yet they still go that extra mile to get that second opinion or stress test, second opinion just being another way to phrase that idea of a stress test. But Bob, really when somebody's going through this stress testing process, maybe they're going outside of that family office, that team of experts that they have at their disposal. What does that look like? When they're going through that second opinion, what exactly should that second opinion be uncovering and really doing throughout this stress test?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. And the beginning of any stress test begins with discovery. And it's discovery of all aspects of your financial world. Usually when you think of finances, most people, when they think of finances, their mind immediately goes to investments. But there's so much more to consider. As an example, how are you currently protecting your wealth? To make sure that you've put a wall around that wealth in terms of protecting yourself from unnecessary litigation, divorce, or that worst case scenario. Secondarily, what is your plan today to keep the government from taking a rake over your wealth every year when you ultimately sell your business or pass it on, or when you ultimately leave money to your heirs? What are you doing in the tax mitigation area? And so we believe that if you can check those boxes, those first two boxes, protection of your wealth and the tax mitigation, then you can move forward comfortably and confidently, because now you have a plan to take care of worst case scenarios and you have a tax strategy. And honestly, the investing part is probably the easiest part of what we put together for our clients. And it's making sure that all other aspects of their financial lives are well taken care of. And most of our clients believe in number one, they come to us with 5 basic needs. And I've talked about this before, but number one, they just want to make sure they're making smart decisions about money. That's what the stress test does. It uncovers what they're currently doing, what their plan is, and will it get you to where you want to go? And we're looking for those gaps in the planning. Secondarily, if you're like me, you believe in paying your taxes, you believe our government has a important purpose in our lives, but we don't want to pay more than we need to pay. Third, we take care of our heirs, we take care of our family members, and we want to make sure that that next generation and the generation after that is well taken care of. As I had mentioned earlier, protecting the assets against unnecessary litigation and divorce. And last of all, to the extent that our clients are charitably minded, we want to magnify those charitable gifts so they can make the most impact on this world, as they utilize and gift assets, cash, business interests to charities.
Yeah, Bob, I'd love to hear in examples, in terms of maybe a time that somebody came to you and your team to go through a stress test, and what was that process like for you and your team, as well as from the client's viewpoint? Because I would imagine if somebody was working with their wealth manager who had a really heavy focus on investments specifically and never really took this well-rounded approach, this elite wealth management, approach that we've chatted about on this show, I bet that stress testing process was pretty eye-opening for them. Talk to us about what that looked like.
All right, good. Well, good, fantastic. But let me back up just a tiny bit
Sure, sure.
before, and I should have said this a minute ago, but most of us don't have $500 million. So let's talk for a minute about the families that we serve at Oswego Private Wealth. And those with 3 million, 8 million, 12 million, or maybe even 20 million plus, that's the level of business owner that we specialize in and that we feel we can make a significant impact and bring the most value. So when we reach them, I think I could answer your question by actually going through some of the questions that we ask and what we're looking at. And maybe our listeners would think about some of these questions and say, well, I might have a gap in that area, or I'm not sure. And I would even say that in these perilous times, as I said, social, political, and economic that we're living in right now, I would say that anybody listening to this who on a scale of 1 to 10 doesn't have a 9 or a 10 in ultimate confidence that their plan is going to get them to where they need to go should be conducting a stress test. As I mentioned, 9 out of 10 family offices in the last 5 years have done the stress test. So if you don't have that confidence, I think it's an ideal time to take care of a stress test. But question one, we want to know, do you have a written succession plan? Have you done a recent business valuation? Do you plan to retire? Because not every entrepreneur plans to retire, but if you do, when? And then who is your potential successor? Have you done a potential successor assessment? Very important question is, who is on your team of advisors? CPAs, attorneys, perhaps an M&A specialist or an M&A attorney, perhaps life insurance, property and casualty, investment specialists, those who are handling your 401k as an example. Do they know each other? And do they work together as a cohesive team? Do they even know who the other individuals are? And are they working together? Because that is what the family offices do. They put everybody under one roof, under one very expensive payroll, and they coordinate everything for the benefit of the business owner client. And so the question is, do you have a team of advisors, and how coordinated and cohesive is that team? Next question is, do you have a personal financial plan that's supported by the business? Um, a business owner has such a dramatic opportunity to utilize the businesses for tax purposes. And of course, for many of our entrepreneur clients, there is no separation between the business and individuals, or as the family. The family is the business is the family. And is your personal financial planning supported by that business? Very, very important question is how recently have you benchmarked your 401k? A 401k sometimes gets set up and they never get thought about, they never get looked at. And we do a 401k benchmarking assessment here at Oswego Private Wealth. And we look at it really in a kind of a trilogy of issues that we want to really hone in on. Number one, we want to make sure that there's a complete investment lineup. Number two, we take a look at the fees. Many plans are very, very expensive, too expensive. And last but not least, and maybe most importantly, is we take a look at who has the fiduciary responsibility for that plan. Oftentimes, a business owner will engage with a third-party administrator, TPA, and believe that they've offloaded that fiduciary responsibility to the TPA, only to find out when it's much too late that they in fact own that fiduciary responsibility. And again, we talked about protecting those assets, making sure the investment lineup, the fees are in line, and transferring that fiduciary responsibility and not owning it yourself as a business owner is very, very critical to the clients that I work with. And then your banking relationships. How many bankers do you have in place? How are those relationships going? And so that's just a small smattering of the kinds of questions that I want to ask about. But those are the things that can uncover gaps. There's a segment of the financial industry that does something called financial life planning, and they create what they call a circle of life. And within that circle, they'll ask you questions on how is your financial life, how's your personal relationship, how's your career going, how's your exercise program, do you feel you're in good shape, are you eating well? And then they sort of put that out on the circle, and invariably, and you score it 1 to 10. Well, the truth of the matter is, Ryan, I've taken those things and my wheel is always out of balance. It wouldn't make it down a quarter mile of the road because I focus really hard on my business. And then one day I wake up and say, boy, have I been eating lousy for the last month. Or then I really get into my nutrition and my exercise program. And then I say, boy, I could have been a better husband. I could have paid more attention to my family, to my wife. And that's kind of how the gaps in the business go. Entrepreneurism it's the American dream. It is the heartbeat and the foundation of our financial system and how wealth is earned in this country. But it is so easy to get out of balance, to have a gap, to say, mañana, I'll take care of that issue tomorrow. So by doing the discovery meeting, which is the core of everything that we do, we're going to uncover where gaps are in the planning. And then through that, we create a plan and solutions, and ultimately the results to give people the confidence and the security to know that they have a plan that can be a 10 and can get them to where they want to go, and to get their families to where they want to go, and to take care of protecting the assets and mitigating the taxes and taking care of the heirs and so on and so forth, as I mentioned.
Yeah, Bob. I love the analogy of the circle. I think all of us can relate to that one. I don't think we're tens on all of it around the board at any given time. But as an aside to our audience, you see why this stress testing process, especially for a business owner, can be so beneficial. It can be leveraged to do so much. I mean, Bob, just a few of those questions that you had rattled off during your discovery process, boy, did they make you look inward and really start having you evaluate some of those key indicators in your life for your business, for your
Mhm.
retirement plan, for your health. So many things to consider, which is why of course, moving outside maybe of your regular team of advisors that maybe are just performing at status quo. To challenge yourself to get that idea of, is my plan on track to help me achieve those goals? I mean, these are all phenomenal questions. And Bob, what are some of the reactions that you get from individuals that you conduct stress tests with when you tell them, hey, look, I got a lot of questions to ask you as we're going to go through this discovery process? What's that like, and what does it feel like from the client's perspective?
Well, it's that's a really interesting question, because I can tell you over the years there are times where prospective clients or will come in just so excited, and they're just ready to do this, and there are other times where, frankly, when the process begins, that discovery meeting is about a 90-minute meeting, and it's generally in person, although in this brave new world we're doing more and more Zoom meetings. But in that meeting, oftentimes people will come in, and this is another thing on their to-do list, and they have a business to run. But very quickly, most of the time, they'll get very serious about this and understand by the quality of questions that were asked, just thinking time for them to think about and reflect upon, gee, where is my business with this? And what is that worst case scenario? What is this massive potential problem that I hadn't thought about at all? And, thank you, Bob. Now you're going to not let me sleep tonight till we get this solved. And I think they're great. I think people are grateful, but most importantly, I think they feel a sense of accomplishment, and just feel that they now have checked the boxes. More than check the boxes, probably a poor way to say it, but they now know they have a plan in place that will get them to where they want to go. And it's not going to become derailed by that event that they didn't anticipate.
Sure thing, sure thing. And Bob, do you have an example for us today that you could share with us of maybe a stress test that you conducted that maybe helped somebody steer them back on course of where they wanted to be, or just help shed some light on an area of their plan that they really weren't focusing on?
Well, oftentimes one of the first things our clients will focus in on is that team of advisors, and they'll realize that they've been operating in a with their advisors in a solo world. I think I may have mentioned this one other time before on another podcast, but I'll never forget a time when I had a new client come in, and we went through this process, and then when we were done with it all, he said, Bob, one of the great values of this was I didn't uh, I didn't know who to call when I needed something done, or for the next steps. He said, I didn't know, do I call my investment guy, before he and I started working together? Do I call the lawyer? Do I call the CPA? And he went on to say, he said, I've spent my entire entrepreneurial business career tearing down silos among functional lines of my business. I wanted shipping to talk to marketing, to talk to accounting, to talk to finance, to talk to sales. And he said, I was tearing down those silos. And then I realized, as I went through the process with you, is that's what my optimal financial world or non-optimal financial world looked like. I had nothing but silos. The attorney didn't know what the investment guy was doing. The investment guy didn't know what the CPA was doing, and nobody spoke to one another. So I would take their big picture. The other thing is, again, as entrepreneurs, our identities blur pretty closely between our business and our families. And so there are family issues that obviously come in here too. We're not just asking about succession plans and valuations, but we're also looking at personal liability. And personal liability, frankly, is one of the lowest hanging fruit. And astonishingly to me, it's the majority of clients are not insured properly for personal liability. So they have they have their insurance, they have their car insurance, their homeowners insurance, and they put a personal liability umbrella of maybe $1 million on that. And yet they have a net worth of $10 million, which is all at risk, because $1 million from the insurance company would go through pretty quickly. And then they have teenagers that are on their car insurance, driving cars, doing what teenagers do. And, God forbid they hit a somebody on a bike or something. Well, exactly who they're going to go after. They're not going after an 18-year-old. They're going after dad and mom. and all of that wealth. And so one of the simplest, most low-hanging fruit is to take care of that liability coverage, those umbrella coverages, to a commensurate rate to their net worth. And that's just one example of something in that blur between family and business that we find that we can really make a big difference for.
Bob, I love that. And there's no doubt here with today's episode that anybody watching or listening can just see and feel the value that takes place with this idea of getting that second opinion, going through that stress test. So, Bob, for anybody out there that is interested in a stress test, is interested in maybe opening up a dialogue with you and your team over at Oswego Private Wealth, what would be the best way they could get in touch with you to just start that conversation?
Well, they can go to our website, and our website has more information about us and contact information and how to reach out to us, including setting up an initial call. I also am offering to anybody who's from this podcast who is a business owner who would like to take it another step further, that we would set up a 30-minute strategy call to see if I could help them and help identify that gap and identify what impact you can make out there in this world, when you're not, while you're still here, and even when you're not. And we also have a book that I've actually, we've helped underwrite a book in this fantastic research. It's just been published here at the end of the first half of 2022. And the book's called Family Fortunes. It's subtitled How Families Thrive Across Generations. And it was written by John Bowen and a couple of other co-authors. And as I said, we've helped underwrite this book. And just a few of the titles, I've written down just a few of the, or I have in front of me just a few of the chapter titles. One is on succession planning, fostering family harmony, which is a podcast we had done before, developing the family constitution, which is also a podcast we've done before, leveraging the power of trust and life insurance, conduct comprehensive exit planning when selling a family business, and of course, the importance of a stress test to make sure that you're on course. This is probably the best book I have seen for a business owner, and I've had a long career so far, and that's something that we can make available to those who are interested in learning more about what we do, how we do it, and maybe studying a little bit more about what some of those gaps are pre-discovery meeting with us.
Fantastic. Well, you heard it, folks. You can head over to OswegoPrivateWealth.com. We had a link there at the bottom of the screen while Bob was rolling through, the ways you can connect with his team. But Bob, look, you've got you're a busy guy. You've got a business to run. We'll let you get back to your day, but we appreciate you carving some time out to walk through this idea of the stress test, especially for business owners and all that value that's really tangled inside of it. So again, be sure to reach out to Bob and his team over at Oswego Private Wealth. But Bob, we'll let you roll. Thank you so much for jumping aboard, and looking forward to having you back on the next one.
Thanks, Ryan. As always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
All righty. Thanks, Bob. And hey, look, as always, one final thank you to our audience for being with us here on the show today. If you enjoyed today's conversation, you took anything away from it, do us a favor, hit that like button, leave a comment under the show, maybe subscribe to it on whichever platform you're checking us out on today. And then, of course, share this information, right, with friends, family, business owners, as we discussed earlier today. We're taking those same strategies, solutions, conversations that Bob is going through on a regular basis with his client base, his team of professionals, and we're bringing them right here to you guys on this show. And we have got some great episodes teed up for you in future talks that we would hate to have you miss out on. So for Bob Dreytis, I'm Ryan Ruff. We're going to go ahead and say so long, but we appreciate you being with us here on today's installment of Lessons by the Lake.